Hi and welcome to Insights Industry Immersion Series. In this series, you will meet data scientists from all across the world as they come and discuss what's trending in the data science and AI space. Let's begin today's episode of Industry Immersion with yet another speaker.
Please give me a VIC or voice is clear if you can hear me. And David, if you can say a quick hi.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Yeah, give us a VIC if all of you can hear our voice loud and clear. Wonderful. So today we have a very exciting session, and this is by one of the very popular faces in the analytics world today, and his name is David. David works for Swiggy. David is a VP analytics at Swiggy. He's been actively involved in the analytics space for quite a while. And when I say quite a while, it's like probably even more than a decade. And this is something exciting because analytics in India is not a very widely used game. It's not so popular back here in India when he started, especially. He has seen the entire transformation of the industry, and to a great extent, his career started in a company that excels at analytics. So I wouldn't say he started his career, but he worked quite a bit of, he spent quite a bit of his entire experience in that company. It's Mu Sigma, and he spent quite a bit of his time learning and upgrading in this field of data science and analytics in Mu Sigma itself for more than a decade, if I'm not wrong. And after that, he moved on to a very exciting startup in back here in India, which has created a lot of waves in the space. It's called as Swiggy. And in Swiggy, his primary roles encompasses him to kind of lead the analytics division and figure out ways in which they can keep improving the business of Swiggy. Now, to say, I mean, there is a lot of things that I can speak about David today. He's an alum of IIM Calcutta. Plus, he's done his dual degree from IIT Delhi. So if you just keep counting the amount of achievements that David has, I think the list goes on and on and on. But let's kind of wrap it up here. I will give it all to David now. Let David take up the session from now, and he'll share a little brief about his journey. And after that, he has a very exciting activity for all of us. So over to you, David. And on behalf of the Insight community, I thank you for participating in today's session and sharing your valuable knowledge with all of us. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Sujit. Good morning, everyone. Hope you had a good Valentine's Day yesterday, or like me, stayed at home.
Yeah. So everybody shared their love for data.
So I wanted to keep this session very interactive. So that's why I said before we begin, let's do a quiz. I will test how good is the chat understanding with a few questions. Okay. Some simple questions to start with. Please, I will take like 2-3 answers on the chat before I give the correct answer. Okay. First question is, how many orders did Swiggy deliver in the past 12 months? Does anyone know?
Yes. How many of you have come prepared to today's session? So David is measuring that.
1 million, 2 million. I said past 12 months. So 50 million, 5 million.
Probably a lot of you are answering one day.
Scroll up. Somebody got the right answer a little ahead. Okay. So a lot of people are actually in the wrong order of magnitude. I think there's a guy called Venki who I saw a little earlier. So the correct answer is about 500 million or so. Okay. So it's a huge number. If you just divide it by 365, it's approximately 1.2, 1.3 million every day. Okay. So that's what we've done in the last 12 months or so. Next question. What is the most sold item on Swiggy? This is very easy. You can't say biryani, you have to say which biryani. Okay. Okay, pizza, chicken biryani, burger. Okay, I think most of you are getting it correct. The most sold item on Swiggy is chicken biryani. Second question is, how many chicken biryanis do we sell on, let's say, in an hour or in a minute? Do you have any guesses? 4 an hour, 1,000 an hour. Okay, that's it's a lots of numbers. Okay, so I'll give you the answer. So we sell chicken biryani, obviously the correct answer. We sell about 95 biryanis every minute. Okay, so whoever said the 5,000 to 6,000 number per hour is probably the correct one. That's the scale we operate at. Next question is for the vegetarians out there. What's the most sold vegetarian item on
Fine.
Swiggy?
Yeah. David, we couldn't get you in the last part.
Uh, I said about 5 to 6,000 an hour.
Wow.
The question for the vegetarians was, what's the most sold vegetarian item on Swiggy? Paneer tikka. Actually, it's not paneer tikka. I can see masala dosa and idlis there. The fact is, people don't order so much breakfast on Swiggy, so it's mostly dinner. Kadai paneer. It's not veg biryani, by the way. So some of us purists actually say veg biryani is actually pulao and not veg biryani. Okay, a bunch of rotis. A lot of people got the paneer part correct. It's some kind of paneer, by the way. So the correct answer is paneer butter masala. So if you are analytical, you can actually say it's a naan. Okay, but maybe you don't want to count the naan as it's a data outlier kind of thing. So paneer butter masala as a main course is the most sold veg item. Okay, this one is an interesting one. What distance did Swiggy drivers drive on 31st of December? You can say total, so not per person, this is the total distance they drove. So somebody said 60,000. If you look at circumference of the earth, it's about 40,000 kilometers. Okay. So my answer has something to do with number of times of going around the world. Not per driver, I mean all of India. Remember that we have about 2 lakh people who would have worked on that night. Okay, it seems to be that everyone is in the wrong order of magnitude. Okay, let me just give you the answer. It's 6.5 million kilometers. Around 167 times around the world is what we did on that night. Just this one night, by the way. Okay. This one is an easy one. How many restaurants are there on Swiggy? 5,000, 10,000. I just did an analysis yesterday, and just Bellandur in Bangalore has access to about 1,800 restaurants or so. Okay. So a couple of you got the right. Okay. So I'll just show you the right answer. About 2 lakhs or so, all of India, which means Bellandur, Koramangala are one of the high dense areas of the country. So it's a really complex exercise to deliver food from so many places is what it is. Okay. So the questions over chat seem to be working all right. So now a little bit about myself. Like Suchish was saying, right, I started my career in 2001. Okay, so long time ago. I started my career doing drug discovery for pharmaceutical companies, but using computers. So I was trying to simulate the human body and then find out drugs. So it's core data science even before it was called data science, by the way. So it's been about 17 years or so doing those things. So big part of my analytical experience comes from Mu Sigma, where I've done many things. I've been an analyst. I've run teams of close to 500 people or so. I've also been on the client side. I was manning all of Europe 2017 and 2018. South of the US in 2015 and 16. and I also was an account manager in Seattle 2009 to 11. Okay, so experience both on doing the work and also on ensuring that the work gets consumed. At Swiggy, we are doing a lot of things. What this talk is going to be is more about how to try to unbox what is there at Swiggy and show you some examples of the kind of work we are doing. Okay, so we'll just get started. So if you look at Swiggy, some of the things we've done is today we are operational in more than 500 cities, continuing to have the industry best average delivery time of 32 minutes. Around 2 lakh people find employment because of Swiggy. So if you consider all the highest employers on the private sector, we're probably among the top 3 or 4 in India itself. As we talked, nearly 2 lakh restaurant partners, and April 18 to April 19, we saw a growth of 3.3 times, and actually literally millions of customers come on our platform every day and transact. Okay. Let me see if I can hide this. Okay, so one of the things we do is let me just see if I'm trying to see if I can hide this.
Don't worry, David. We can't see that on your screen. We can see the presentation.
Oh, you can see the presentation. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things I just want to talk 4 examples today. First is how do we ensure that we cut wastages in delivery time. So that's one example. Second example is on the restaurant side, which is if you had the whole of India to start a restaurant, where would you start it? What would be the cuisine? And what dishes would it cook? Okay, so that's the second question. Third question is, how do you personalize the app experience? And fourth is there some kind of intelligence that we can create using food itself that we can use for everybody? Okay. First question is just to give a little context, right? As soon as you place an order, if you see the top left of this image, the order goes into 2 places. First is it goes to the restaurant where there is this concept of preparation time. Second is we look for a delivery executive. The delivery executive goes to the restaurant, waits at the restaurant for the food to get prepared. And when the food gets prepared and the delivery person has reached the restaurant, we actually collect the food and deliver it to the customer location. So that's typically how it works. Okay. So first question is, what is the waste in this whole thing there? Okay. Do you have any ideas on what could be the wasted here? Okay. Absolutely, all of you are getting it correct. So pretty much any of this whole line, right? Wait time is all wasted. Okay. Firstly, we don't pay people as high for waiting. We pay them for actually driving. So they are unhappy to actually wait. And then because we are still paying them, it's a big cost for Swiggy also. So we want to ensure that wait time is reduced to a minimum. Okay. So now the question to all of you is, from an analytics perspective, what can we do to reduce this specific wait time? Okay, so there are really good answers that are coming up. Got it. Some of you are actually saying, can we get people to do something else while the food is being prepared? So the one of the big problems that we see is we are unable to predict what the food preparation time is. Okay, and if we are actually able to predict how long it takes to prepare the food, then we can actually delay this part of it, looking for delivery executive, right? Delay that part of it, and then the first mile is anyway, we know what the first mile is going to take. So we can then start looking for the delivery executive late. For example, if you ordered, let's say, gulab jamun, right? Gulab jamun is usually pre-prepared and kept in the restaurant. So what you can then do is, the prep time is pretty much zero for a gulab jamun. So you can just send the person immediately. But if it's something like a tandoori chicken, which might take 20 minutes to cook, so then you can actually wait 10 or 15 minutes, and then send the person, so that they can, you don't have to wait that much. So basically what we did was, we created a model where the assignment is happening as the food is being prepared. So one of the big predictions we do is something called the prediction of the food preparation time for restaurants. So as you might be aware, it's not easy at all. It's very difficult because there is item level thing which is causing an issue. So if you order, let's say from a South Indian restaurant, you order a sandwich, a juice, and a masala dosa. Okay, each of those things, three things, takes a different time to prepare, and you have to anticipate what's the slowest items. Okay, if any of you ordered rava dosa at a restaurant, you'll know that it takes a lot of time to prepare that rava dosa. Then you can predict the first mile journey for the delivery partner, and then what you can do is, like some of you actually mentioned, you can actually reshuffle some of the orders to ensure that the best delivery partner who is near and can reach in time for the food to get prepared can also work. So when we launched this, what happened was, the wait time reduced by 20%. What it does is that 25% can now be used for delivering other orders. So which means you are better utilizing the fleet and hence reducing the uh, cost that we have for every order that we deliver. Okay, which we can then pass on to our customers. Okay. While we were making this, we had one big problem, which is the fact that the model was really terrible, by the way. Okay, the model was really bad. The reason the model was bad was uh, the data that we had was getting cut off on one side. Like for example, we had data of when the partner would reach the restaurant. We had the reached data, and we had the data of when they would pick up the food. Okay, so we assumed that the food was getting prepared, uh, or food was ready when it got picked up. That was not correct, because in many cases the food was also waiting. So food was prepared much before the partner arrived at the restaurant. Okay, and because if you look at the statistical way, you take a distribution, you cut one half of the distribution, which is person reaching after the food was ready. Obviously, one half of the distribution is cut, so you can't model that half. Okay, so you obviously have wrong answers. So what we had to do was, we actually had to change our business model to ensure that we were able to actually capture the correct data, and then work towards building a model based on the correct data that we did. Okay, so that's what we are saying. So while the predictions were sophisticated, the problem was we didn't have actual data on prep times. So what we did was, we told the restaurants that, hey, we'll give you a little bit of incentives if you press an extra button. So as soon as the food is ready, you press this button, and then we'll give you an incentive. So then that the food is ready button actually helped us get the accurate data, and that data helped us build a better model. Okay, so the key takeaway for today, first, number one is intelligence, right? It's usually very cool to build machine learning, artificial intelligence, all those things, but it fundamentally begins by collecting accurate data. Okay, I'll just pause for a minute here if you have any questions on this specific thing. You can type out on the chat and I'll answer them. Okay, so no question. So we can continue. Okay.
So David, there are a few questions like, so somebody is asking where was this button? So primarily, friend, it was on the restaurant partner app, not on your app.
Yeah.
Right? So the restaurant partner needed to tap it. So David, one question here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like considering incentivization is a good idea, but how do you ensure that the restaurant partner actually kind of figures out that this person's order is ready? Like, do they have to keep track of it, the orders, and then they have to come back to the app and click on the button for that particular order?
Yeah, typically what happens, right? Uh, so there is a, so I'm sure you've seen it in restaurants. There is a ticket which is printed out. So there's a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
That piece of paper goes to the inside the kitchen,
Oh,
where
yeah.
they look at the piece of paper and they prepare something. Okay.
Right. Right.
When the food is prepared, that piece of paper goes on to the box or it goes off somewhere else, and a
Mm-hmm.
duplicate piece of paper is kept. Okay. On that piece of paper is an order ID. Okay.
Right.
Sometimes if you order on Swiggy, you will see that that piece of paper comes to your house as well.
Mm-hmm.
That order ID is available to see on the owner app. Okay. All you
Right.
have to do is
Okay.
click on the order ID and say, hey, the food is ready for that. Okay. That's
Oh, okay. Nice.
how it works. Okay.
Nice.
An
Okay. This is
interesting thing
yeah.
here is just outside of the specific example, um, restaurants today have not changed so much in the last 30-40 years. Okay. If you go inside a
True.
restaurant nowadays, uh, only the app is the latest technology. Okay.
Right.
The rest of the kitchen is all old tech. Okay. So any of you budding entrepreneurs on the call, there is a huge space for disruption here. Obviously, Swiggy will try and do the disruption ourselves, but I'm just saying that there is an opportunity to disrupt. Okay.
True. True. There's an interesting question here. So this is about the button that helps you collect the time duration of the
Mm-hmm.
food preparation time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, you said food could be waiting, but there could be another option that food is waiting to be cooked. So that could be a prior condition.
Food
Like
is
there is a
waiting.
list of there is a
Oh,
list of
food
20
is in the
dosas.
queue. In the queue. Okay.
Yes, it's in the queue.
Yeah. Yeah. See the I so as a analyst, I would say I want more data. Okay. But the fact is, collecting the data costs us money. Okay.
Right.
Because the restaurant won't press the button just like that. Okay.
True.
Um, so we have to make a trade-off on how much data we collect versus what's the cost of that data. So in this case, it is very high. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we don't collect that.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks a lot. I think yeah.
Okay.
I'll just quickly go through the other questions, but I think it's majorly answered.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. We
Yeah,
can
there's
continue.
some questions on delivery time changing automatically on holidays. Yes, it does. Because it also, delivery time also depends on the stress on the system. Okay. Stress on the system is defined as how many orders are there divided by how many delivery partners are there. Okay. As long as orders are less than delivery partners, there is no stress. When the orders are more than delivery partners, then there is stress in the system. So, for example, if there are 100 delivery partners and you have 150 orders on the system, okay, to deliver the 150 the last 50, right? First 50 of the 100 who are delivering have to finish delivering their orders, then they can go and pick them up. Okay, that kind of delays your orders, and that's why on Sunday nights, for example, if you order at 8:30, it takes some time to deliver the order. Okay. There's also a question on how much restaurants have grown. Restaurants actually have 30-40% of their business coming now from online platforms. Okay, maybe a little higher also. So basically, they all have sections where dedicatedly for online food ordering, and it's a huge big margin business for them. Okay, so excuse me. Second question. Okay. I'm sure there are some of you living in Sri Lanka. If you open the app in Koramangala, so you will see hundreds of restaurants and huge number of top brands. The same thing if you open Sri Lanka, you probably not see that many good brands. Okay. Obviously, we don't have that many uh, restaurants, good restaurants in Sri Lanka, although a lot of people are living there nowadays. The question is, if you have to start a new restaurant, okay, how would you go about starting that restaurant? So what different data would you use? Okay, so the good thing from Pratik says empty search logs. Basically, when you're searching on the app, let's say I went to Sri Lanka, search for corner house. If there's no corner house there, then that means there's no corner house there. So the empty search results is one good one. I saw some of you mentioning demographics. So we do use things like per capita number of restaurants and per capita per number of restaurants per eligible person also. You can also do orders per person. Okay, let me see some of the others that are here. Use of online platform. So if somebody is actually opening the app, we actually know that they opened the app, and when they opened the app, they didn't see anything. That means that we need more restaurants there. That's a good point. So as you can see, there are a lot of areas, lot of things that we have to figure out. A lot of signals that we get, which basically tell us that people need good brands. We also get anecdotal feedback from people also. So what we did was we took multiple strategic framework. First, we had a framework for discovering cuisine or category gaps. So maybe a question for you guys is, how can you figure out which cuisine is not good in a given area? Okay. Okay. So somebody said less orders. Less orders or more orders is actually not a measure of whether it's good or not. That the reason is sometimes people don't like certain kind of food, and hence that food will have less orders. Okay. Ratings is a good answer. So if the ratings are not very good, that means the food is not very good. Problem is many people. The average restaurant rating is 3.9 to 4.4. Okay, and it's a little difficult to operate with that kind of very small range. Okay. Any other things? Any signals on the app that can tell us that a certain cuisine is not very good? Okay, food item rating is a good point. Okay, I'm just looking at the. Yeah, number of repeats is a good one. Customers do talk to us and tell us their feedback. Okay. So one of the signals that we use is what people do on the app. So typically, if you are doing, if you're trying to look for, let's say, Chinese food, right? You go to a Chinese restaurant and you see that it's not good enough for you. So you go back, choose another Chinese restaurant, maybe look at the menu. You may not like that also. So you do this back and forth on the app. Okay. What that back and forth on the app does is, for a given cuisine, what are the number of restaurants that you visit before you actually make a final purchase, right? Restaurant visited per conversion, right? That is a metric we can benchmark across the city, and there are many parts of the cities where that metric is really bad, which is people are unable to choose what the preferred restaurant is. So if on the contrary, if there is really good set of restaurants, you just go to a restaurant and buy it immediately. Okay. So that is a metric we also measured, and that's what we call as cuisine or category gaps. Okay. So I'll just give a quick example of how we do it. So location identification, you can actually, we talked about some of the signals, right? Like null searches, app launches where there is nothing there. Then you can also say what are the demand pockets that we have, and then you can do some kind of location clustering to identify the hotspot. More important is, for example, how do you identify what is the best restaurant? Let's say biryani is a cuisine you want to bring to a location. So how do you identify what is the best restaurant? So one of the ways we have of doing it is what we call as brand affinity score. What basically it does is there are some signals that we give to the restaurant when we really love a restaurant. For example, right, if you really love a restaurant, you will not look at anything else. You will just go there, bite at the first click. You click that restaurant, you know exactly what you want, and buy it off. You may even search for that restaurant and buy it. Okay. There are other restaurants which you use on special occasions. For example, there is Beijing bites that I might do on a regular day, but then when I have special family coming over, I might actually try mainland China. Okay. So if I can identify those special use cases, okay, or somebody is new to Bangalore and let's say they want to have ice cream. So what is the first restaurant they go to when they are new to the city and look for something, right? That particular brand is more loved. Okay. So these are signals of customer love that we have. We have like 10, 15 of those. And what we do is we just do a 2x2 of the amount of orders coming from that high love kind of journeys and the total size of the brand. So if you look at, this is Hyderabad, by the way. If you look at the top right, so there is this, I'm sure you've all heard of Paradise Biryani. So it is 80th percentile of orders which come from that high love journeys. And it's also one of the most sold biryani. So if you want to know, hey, what's the best biryani in Hyderabad? This obviously top right is what it is. Okay. On the left-hand side, right, Pista House, for example, does a lot of sales, but then it's not high love sales. Okay. So I talked to a few people on what Pista House is. Basically, they are good at other things like biscuits, for example. Okay. It's more of a bakery than a biryani place, but they also sell biryani. Hence, the sales is very high, but the love is not so high at Pista House. Okay. Bottom right, you will see some of the emerging brands like Swagat, for example. Lot of love, but the sales are not very high. So these are places which we can identify as future areas of cooperation. Okay. So that's what we do. So basically, the combination of the solution, finding the right place using all the signals we talked about, finding the right cuisine using the back and forth that we talked about, cuisine gaps, and then trying to find the best brand is what we do to ensure that we get the right restaurants to the right places to meet the supply gaps. Okay. So one of the questions I also saw was, how does Swiggy create its own private brands? When we do this cuisine gap analysis or category gap analysis, we also find out that there are a lot of areas where there is just nothing there. For example, if you want to eat food at the office for like an office party or something, one of the things you want to do is you don't want to get your hands dirty. Okay, but you want good quality food without getting your hands dirty. There is only one brand today, which is pizza, which allows you to eat food without getting your hands dirty. Okay. And pizza is unhealthy and nobody really likes it. But if you have an office party, that's fairly convenient. Okay. That is one of the reasons we built the bowl company, which is how can you have a convenient bowl format, excellent world cuisine. You can order anything you want, but you don't get your hands dirty and fairly convenient. And it's premium food. So that is one of the benefits of the bowl company. So now, if you want to have an office party, you have an option B, where you can have good Indian food without getting your hands dirty. That's bowl company. Homely is fairly obvious. There are literally no companies which have home style food. So that's how we created the Homely brand. So one thing, again, the learning from this example was the fact that you can have analytics help in strategic decisions, but it requires you to fully understand the domain well. So literally our analysts keep visiting kitchens. Obviously, we eat a lot of food also. We eat food, visit kitchens, go on drives with delivery partners, just to understand the business itself. Because if you don't understand the business, the analytics itself is not very useful. Again, I'll pause here and take any questions that you have.
So friends, one small request, please ask questions that are aligned to the slides, what we are discussing right now. Otherwise, Swiggy as a business is huge and you can have probably billions of questions around what could be possibly a challenge for Swiggy and how did they resolve. So let's not get there. Let's fix to the slides and try to complete it. Post session, if time permits, we'll take extra questions.
Okay. So just one question on demand and supply, right? Just the questions that came out. There's nothing related to this one. We have very sophisticated prediction models of how many orders we get, and we have very sophisticated models of how many people will log in on that day. So remember, the people who work for Swiggy, the delivery partners, are purely optional. Okay, so we have to predict how many will log in on a given day. Hopefully, we ensure that we schedule the shifts and the benefits to ensure that demand and supply actually fully match. Okay, if demand and supply doesn't match, then we have a problem, and that's a big problem because orders can't get delivered. Okay. Today we don't have ways of in the middle of the day trying to figure out how I can match the demand. So like yesterday, Valentine's Day, orders jumped compared to last Friday. Okay. If we hadn't anticipated that people would be ordering more on Valentine's Day, then we wouldn't be able to staff it. So fortunately, we were able to anticipate and staff it properly and cater to the extra demand. Okay. So we do a lot of that as well. Okay. Any questions? Suchit, do you have anything that you have?
So I think, yeah, more or less like all the questions are around demand and peak on situational days like 31st December or 14th Feb. So yeah, I think you already addressed that question.
Okay. Yeah, just one thing on demand specifically is consumer habits are also changing. So it becomes a little bit difficult for us to predict demand. So when I say consumer habits are changing, I'm sure some of you have done it also. Okay, which is let's say you're on vacation in Goa. Okay, literally happened to me. You're okay, vacation in Goa and you want to have breakfast or lunch or something, right? 5 years ago, I would not have thought of ordering food inside the house, okay, or the hotel. But this year I went and I was like, hey, let's just order on Swiggy because hey, I'm too bored to go out. Okay, that is consumer behavior changing. So you're at a beach and instead of having food at the beach, you still want to order on Swiggy because it's a little bit more convenient and you can have more of your holiday to enjoy, more places to visit, right? Those consumer trends changing is a tough thing for us from a perspective of planning. For example, 2019 Diwali, people didn't order in, okay, and 2018 Diwali, people ordered in like crazy. Okay, I don't know why that happened. Okay, 2018 Ganesh Chaturthi, people didn't order in. 2019 Ganesh Chaturthi, people just went crazy and they ordered like crazy. Okay, so these trends are changing and it becomes a little difficult for us to predict those things. Okay. Any This is a good question on how do you stop food wastage. Today we are able to plan orders andaze se. Basically, there is a kitchen manager who does the planning for the kitchen. Most of the items actually don't spoil. For example, rice, even onions, tomatoes, oil, things like that, they don't spoil much. So the problem is not very acute. So our food wastage in our private brand kitchens is only like 2% or so. It's not really a big problem for us. Okay, but we are building a model which can do item level forecast, so that in the middle of the day, let's say once Rajma Chawal is prepared, that Rajma Chawal doesn't go to waste, because if it's not eaten in the next 15 minutes, then the quality goes bad. Okay, so next section. This is on the app. Okay, Question is, how do you personalize the app? Okay, what that means is some person is seeing opening the app at the same place. They see a different set of restaurants. I'm sure two friends would see that. How do you ensure that the list of restaurants that are shown are personalized for the people? Okay. So any ideas? I will just look into my chat once again. History of order, good point. Veg, non-veg, I'll talk about that. Yeah, a bunch of people are saying previous orders. Okay, geolocation. Rating is another one. Okay, some people are saying recommended systems. I'm saying, how do you build the recommended system? Okay. Taste profile. Okay. Money spent, combos, ratings, favorites. Okay, so I've got a lot of, I think pretty much the answer is there. Okay. Let's go back to this one. Simple things. Four typical things you have. Two are personalized, two not personalized. This is just the basic one. First is restaurants that sell a lot more, obviously will show up higher. Okay, that's first one. Second, restaurants which have better ratings will show up a lot more. Okay, so ratings and net sales, that is non-personalized. Okay, and all of these, they also are very, very hyper local. So when I sit at my house, imagine there is an imaginary line of a certain radius that is drawn, and the radius changes based on time of day, what city you're in, what zone you're in. That radius is where I can see the restaurants for. Okay, these are the non-personalized ones, and you have the personalized ones, which are pretty much, if you ordered from a restaurant a lot, that restaurant obviously has to show up. If you have similar restaurants compared to what you ordered from before, that's also place where you show up. Okay, so what we do is at any point of time we have many algos. Okay, so the one I explained is just basic what we call as relevance based thinking. Basically, the things that sell more, we show more of that. Okay, so this one, if you just look at the formula, it says that whichever thing I've ordered, that's the one I will get more of. Okay, that's what that math means. But we also have gradient boosted trees that we use, which then have many variables going into it. And obviously, if you look at the graph, blue is what this utility function was. The yellow one is the gradient boosted trees. This huge bump in performance just because of using a different model. So just the gradient boosted models also, we have like 3-4 of those models at any point of time, and different cities work on different set of combinations. Okay, so that's what we have going currently. So then we also have things which have multi-objective functions, which is can we optimize conversion first, but can we also optimize distance? For example, can I give a higher priority to closer by restaurant because then the food comes fresh? Okay, so you can have multi-objective function based models also. So at any point of time, we have at least like 6 or 7 experiments running on the listing screen, and which every iteration we have achieved higher conversion and basically able to convert on the intent. Okay, so the learning from this is that we do a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence and things like that, but the fact is that not all of them work in the real world. Okay, and because they don't all work in the real world, what we're trying to do is test like many versions of it at different points of time, and they work in different situations, and then use those specific situations. Like something might work at breakfast but not work at dinner, right? So then we use the one that works at breakfast for breakfast, and the dinner one is a separate one. Okay, So at any given point of time, you probably are exposed to different algorithms that are being tested. Key takeaway is build, experiment, and iterate, and that's the only way to keep on improving. Okay, I will go back to chat if you have any questions on this specific topic. Okay, there was one question right earlier on saying what are the typical machine learning techniques that you use. That is a very tough question because there are a lot of maybe like hundreds, maybe even 1,000+ models that we use, different kinds of things. Okay, there are very simple rule-based models. Okay, things like if x is greater than 10 minutes or if y is greater than 50, then something happens. Okay, so that is like very most basic of it. Then we'll have whatever linear regression, logistic regression. Some of our forecasting models are like simple ARIMA, ARIMAX kind of things. We also use real-time Facebook profit with external variables. Okay, then you go into other things which are random forest, and then you can do different kinds of boosting. So you can gradient boosting, ensemble methods. Then we have get into the deep learning territory as well. If you ask me what is my favorite ML, currently the one that gives best accuracy is gradient boosted models, either gradient boosted regressions or gradient boosted trees. Both of them are doing that. So one question I see is getting Facebook data or any social media data for personalization. Unfortunately, we do not have access to your social media profiles. Okay, so I can't do anything there. But we are in the process of getting your profile inferred from what you ordered on us. For example, we know what phone you use. We also know what credit card you use. So based on phone and credit card, we can have a measure of your affluence. Okay, that gives us a symbol, a sign that is there. Okay, we also know why you reach the call center and what are the typical problems you have. So we know how picky you are about certain things. So based on those things, right, like how discount prone you are. Okay, if you're discount prone, maybe we can give you something which is good value, but maybe it will come a little late. So you might be okay with it. There are others who will be like, hey, I want my food to come fast. I'll pay you more money if you want. Okay, then we can take money and deliver it faster for them. Okay, so those kind of things we do all the time. Okay, but we don't use social media profiles or variables as it can be here. Any other questions? Hey, Suchit, you want to choose any of the questions?
Yeah, David, it's getting a little tough with 400+ participants.
Mm-hmm.
The number of questions are growing pretty fast. So I think if we kind of want to relate to this situation itself, so key takeaway 3. So building, experimenting, implementation, and iterating. Can you shed some light on a situation where you experimented something and it worked out good, but when you deployed it in real world, it turned out bad?
Oh, it happens all the time here. Okay.
Yeah, so can you shed
we
one
have,
such situation? Yeah.
About a year back, we had this big problem called null searches. Okay. Null searches, when you go and search for something and nothing shows up. Okay. And that was at a really high number. Like, really unacceptable that Swiggy was showing nothing. Okay. Like, for example, if let's say I search for, let's say, corner house here. There is no corner house near my house, but there is a polar bear. So if I search for corner house, it should ideally show me polar bear. It doesn't. Okay, so at least last year it doesn't. It didn't. So one of the initiative we had was to reduce null searches, and the assumption was once null searches went down, obviously conversions would go up because you start seeing more results, and because you see results, then you are able to actually buy something. Obviously, it's a no-brainer. So we took a target to do a 4 times reduction in null searches. So we went and did the null search reduction, and when we did the A/B test, we actually found out that with null searches being reduced, our conversion also went down. Okay, so which was very strange. It required a lot of RCA to figure out what happened. So what we figured out was there was a bug in the logic of the new search results model. Okay. And that bug was leading to a lower conversion, which because we did the A/B test, we were able to fix it at 1%, 2% scale. And then once we figured out the bug, then we rolled it out to 100%. And now it's actually showing an improvement in conversion. So it could be just bugs, or it could be that ML was working in
smaller
data, but not in the real world. That also happens quite frequently.
Okay. So one learning that probably we can all consider here is experimentations could possibly mislead you at times. And it's always better to do a staggered approach, like you don't release it to the entire population, rather do it in incremental ways, like maybe an experimentation that looks good, release it to say 10% of the audience and then reevaluate. Is that a good approach?
Absolutely. So the audience size should depend on the sample size required to fulfill the experiment. Okay. So for something like search, in this case, search runs, as I said, millions of people across India. So 1% is good enough. Okay. But there are other places where you'll be like, hey, in Bangalore, only in Koramangala, I want to do something. Okay. Then 1% is not enough. You might need like 50%, and you might need to do the experiment for 3 weeks, 4 weeks for you to actually get results. Okay. So we do all the way from 1% to 50%. We have options of what to choose. So we choose a sample size like that. Okay. So somebody was saying, hey, the search algo itself was good. The bug was somewhere else. Okay. It's actually not that simple, because the bug was in the search itself. For us, you might think that search is just, hey, search here result aaya. But there is disambiguation. Okay. So is it a dish or is it a restaurant? Okay. When you think it's a restaurant, what are the results you're showing for restaurant? When you think it's a dish, what are the results you're showing? Okay. So if you search for pizza versus Pizza Hut, what happens? If you search for pizza, do I know you're searching for Pizza Hut or is it just pizza? Okay. So all of those choices that are being made as you do the search are also part of the search algo. So when I say there was a bug in the search algo itself, and not just like an IT kind of thing. Okay.
Awesome. So one more question, like when we are talking about sampling, one interesting question that we have here is, so it is always in the air, but is there a scientific approach to figuring out what should be the right size of the sample, or it's only experimentation?
Sample size, I think you should be able to figure out based on the population size, one, based on the metric you are evaluating and the variation in the metric. Okay. The mean standard deviation and the population size will give you the sample size. Okay.
Okay. So
for all large populations, I think sample size of 10,000 is good enough, is what they say. But there are tools which will help you figure out the sample size.
Okay. So there are a few websites, friends, which actually help you figure out what should your ideal sample size be. But again, considering this point, theoretical ways may not always give you the best output. It is a continuous experimentation that will probably help us solve bigger problems.
The other thing, as I said, 10,000, right? 10,000 for Swiggy is just like that. Okay. But then people will say, no, it's like, I can get it in a few hours maybe. Okay.
Right.
But then people will say, hey, was Sunday different compared to Monday? Okay. Because everybody orders on Sunday, but not that many order on Monday. Yes, Sunday and Monday are different. Okay. But my 10,000 sample size was for the whole experiment. Okay. Now, if you want to do Sunday and Monday as different, then I need 10,000 for Sunday and 10,000 for Monday. Okay. Suddenly my sample size is blown up. Then people will say, hey, what about metros versus non-metros?
Right.
Okay, then more sample size. Okay, what about high repeat users, low repeat users, and new users? Okay,
right.
I need more samples. So the more cuts you want to do on the experiment,
the
more sample size you need. Okay, it's always good to anticipate upfront what are all the things you need, because so we did an experiment with all like 5, 6, 7 kinds of cuts. Okay. Huge sample size, running it at like 10% of all of the country and things like that. Then somebody came and said, hey, I want to know what happens at a restaurant level. Okay, remember we have 2 lakh restaurants. Okay, now
Mm.
at a restaurant level, getting significant sample size is like I need to do a 6-week experiment. Okay, we
Okay.
told them,
Yep.
yeah, look, we got to do it for 6 weeks. Do you want to really spend that much time to figure out the answer, or can I give you by restaurant category? Okay, because I can do a cuisine plus kind of restaurant and then give you a rough answer. So we actually, in this case, we didn't want to wait the 6 weeks. We took an approximation for the category and gave the answer. Okay.
Perfect. So, friends, one more important insight from David this time is at times approximation will help you. It's not that you have to totally rely on the observation, the output that the statistical experiments are giving you. At times, even approximation will get you close to the answer, and it depends. It's basically a trade-off. It's a cost-benefit analysis. How much cost you want to invest, or how much money you want to invest to experiment and figure out the answer. So oftentimes you have to take a hard call that do you want to kind of approximate or do you want to really do a statistical analysis and spend a lot of time and money. So I think, yeah, David, I think this part we are
I can
good.
take some more questions before we hang up. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll just take a few more questions. I'll just read them. And so uh, there's a question around your experimentation with discounts. So oftentimes it's been observed that people get discounts when they don't order for some time, like they have put it in the cart and there's a discount. Oftentimes they see discounts for you and your friend is different. Oftentimes you see the surge price, surge as in like the delivery price of the partner, it fluctuates between people.
Okay.
So how are these things being handled at runtime?
Yeah. So first, let me just clarify on the discounts. Okay. So we do have different kinds of discounts running, and then they kind of clash and make people unhappy. Okay. First, what restaurants do is restaurants are willing to give higher discount to people who've not transacted on them. Okay. So if it's a new to restaurant, then you get a higher discount than regular user to this restaurant. This is a choice that the restaurant makes. Okay. Then we have new to platform itself. If you've never ordered on Swiggy, you get a higher discount. So 3 people could see 3 different discounts because A, they're new to Swiggy itself, B, they're new to the restaurant, or C, they're existing users regular to the restaurant. So that's one differentiation. Okay. The other thing we do is dormant reactivation, which is if you've not bought with us for some time, we give you a dormant reactivation coupon, which is we give you a coupon, come back and trade on us or order on Swiggy. So that is another kind of discount we have. We also have different kinds of targeted discounting specifically for individuals using lots of different kinds of rules. Okay. These are all different coupon numbers and coupon types that you keep getting. So there is a lot of variation in how we do discounts. People, I'm sure analysts will understand, but then consumers find it a little difficult to understand why my friend is getting more and I am getting less. It's just that because your friend has not ordered from the restaurant is willing to pay a little bit more to acquire that customer. Okay. So it's the same thing as you're a new user on Paytm, you get whatever 300 rupees back. If you're not a new user on Paytm, you get nothing back. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that we are doing on the restaurant side. So delivery fees are actually the same for everyone. The difference in delivery fee or surge that delivery fee that you might see is probably because you're in different experiments that we are running. Okay. So in Bangalore specifically, we are running an experiment where we've put a 1 rupee difference in different people. Okay. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Okay. To see how people are responding. Okay. As an experiment we are running. So most of the people, maybe like 95% of the people won't see any different delivery fees. And even if it's different, it'll be different at the same time. That said, there is the trade-off, or let's say the stress has been changing very rapidly, right? Let's say I put a cutoff at, let's say 1.1, and when you are looking at it is 1.1, when your friend is looking at it is 1.2. So you get a different delivery fee. That could also be the reason. It's like two Uber rides are never the same price, or often they're not the same price, especially at peak hours, right? So that's the reason you could be seeing different delivery fees. But most of the time, everything else remaining the same, you should not see different delivery fees.
Wonderful. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially like in any other business as well. It's basically a technique to acquire customers. So if somebody is not really getting hooked up onto your platform, you tend to kind of lure them into it by giving them some extra incentive. So one more question here, David. I think that we can kind of quickly kind of summarize. I know we already through the session. It's almost an hour now. Uh, so this is around your ratings perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you judge a new, like say a restaurant was kind of introduced very recently versus a restaurant that was introduced say 2 years back? How do you give provision to people?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you all able to hear my voice at least?
I can hear you now. I can hear you. So I think I got the question. So there is something called the cold start problem, which a new restaurant,
yes.
It's unable to get visibility and hence can't get sales. And if you can't get sales, you don't get visibility. Okay. So now what do? That's a cold start problem. So that is something that we've taken as a side input into our, like I said, Gradient Boosted models. Gradient Boosted model, again, they also have the same problem, which is how do we get the new restaurants done? Okay. So one simple answer is if it's part of a chain, we take the average of the parent. Okay. So let's say it's a new Subway that has opened. So we know that Subway has a certain quality. So we'll start off with the quality of the parent of the Subway or all the Subways of the country or the city. We can say, hey, all Bangalore Subways will average it out, and this new Subway which is opened will have that rating. Okay. And it will then start showing up in similar things. If there is a new restaurant without being part of a chain, that makes it a little bit more complicated. I don't have an answer for it yet, but yeah, we are working on it. It's a known issue that we are working on. Okay.
Oh, okay. So the cold start problem still persists.
Yeah. So we can, if we know that it's got good ratings and stuff like that, we can actually give them some free ads. Ads, what to do is ads bump up the location, bump up the
orders.
Not orders, the position of on the listing where the restaurant is shown.
Ranking. Yeah.
You have at a higher position for some time, then we have enough data to make the model run. Okay. Then people click on it or buy stuff. Okay. Once we have enough data, then it works properly.
Awesome. So do you want to kind of continue with the presentation, or do you want to take
another 10 minutes if others are?
Yeah, I think that's totally okay. We are all okay with the time. So if you want, you can continue with the presentation.
So there's a question on fraud, by the way. I can just take Q&A for 10 minutes. There's a question on fraud. Okay. I'm sure all of us know we have really, really smart customers, restaurant and delivery people. Okay. At every point of time, they're trying to find ways to abuse the system. Okay. So we have a lot of teams specifically trying to curb all kinds of fraud. I can just give one example, right? For example, you can't make an order more than 10,000 rupees on Swiggy today. Okay. And until a few weeks ago, if you canceled an order, the maximum you would be charged is 200 rupees. So what we saw a couple of restaurants doing is they would place an order for, let's say, 1,000 rupees. Okay. And then go to this button called edit order. You can, I didn't know that button existed, but you can go and edit order. And in the edit order, there was a bug in the system which allowed people to put as much as they wanted. Okay. So they would increase like rotis to like 1,000 rotis or something and take the order total to like 1,00,000 rupees. Okay. Save it, pay on UPI. So you pay 1,00,000 to Swiggy and place the order. Okay. So the restaurant confirms the order and says that food is ready. Okay. Then what happens is the customer goes and cancels the order. So what happens is the maximum cancellation charge was 50% or 200 rupees, whichever is lower. So the maximum of that 1,00,000 order was 200 rupees. So as soon as the order gets cancelled, they would pay, they would get a 200 rupee cancellation charge. So 99,800 rupees would go back to the customer. Okay. But the restaurant would then say that, hey, look, I prepared the food. Now I need the money. So Swiggy would pay them the entire money for the order, which is 1 lakh rupees. Okay. So what was happening was collusion between consumers and restaurants, where the consumer would place the order on behalf of the restaurants. So for a loss of 200 rupees, the restaurant was gaining 1 lakh rupees. Okay. And some restaurants were doing it actually many times a day. And this is a ton of money that is lost just for things like that. Okay. I can talk for many hours just on the fraud topic, but yeah, we understand there's a lot of fraud, and there's a lot of things we do slowly to ensure that fraud is reduced. Okay.
So there's one interesting question around hygiene. So one of the approaches for sure is the bowl company itself, where you have full control on the hygiene of the food. How do you do it for your partner restaurants? Because a lot of these restaurants are simple, small kitchens in probably some lane in some gully, and there's no way to control that. So how do you kind of
There are
ensure that?
two parts to that. First is we can leave hygiene to the government. Okay. Basically, FSSAI gives a certification to every restaurant, and that needs to be renewed every year. So a restaurant cannot sell on Swiggy if it's not certified. Okay. So as part of the onboarding, they have to upload those documents and things like that. So we do check those things. But actually, consumers don't trust FSSAI so much as well. So one of the things we are considering doing is doing our own audits of a restaurant and then put a sticker saying, or a badge saying certified hygienic kind of things. Because I've talked to some consumers and they're like, hey, I eat from this restaurant quite a bit because I know they cook healthy and I've gone and seen the kitchen there. Okay. There is a lot of people who actually worried about the hygiene of the restaurant. So we are thinking of putting a certified hygienic or clean restaurant kind of sticker or badge on the restaurant. Not yet done though, but we're considering it. But as of now, it's just government which is there.
Okay, so it's kind of a complicated problem, and then reaching out to probably a major chunk of the restaurants from Swiggy side is also too operationally exhaustive. So
Yeah.
I think a fair bit like coming on.
Same thing goes for healthy also, right? What is
Right.
healthy food? What is healthy food? Okay, people think, let's say, milkshake is healthy. Okay, but is milkshake healthy, or a sandwich is it
Not really.
sandwich healthy? Sandwich may be like very unhealthy. so
Absolutely.
it's very subjective also.
Okay, one interesting question. I don't know if you would want to discuss on this, but it's a little off topic. So Swiggy started off with delivery of food, then it got into cloud kitchen, and now it has become hyper local deliveries. What next for Swiggy?
Okay, so I will tell you our vision. Okay,
Yeah.
our vision is to improve the standard of living for urban consumers by providing them unparalleled convenience. Okay, so we are all about convenience. Anything that is inconvenient for you, we want to remove the inconvenience from your life. Okay, so we have food which was a big inconvenience, which is now gone away. So now even on nights when I want to eat out, I'm like, yeah, who will drive that 30 minutes to go to the restaurant? I'll just get the food in. Okay, that inconvenience we removed. The very close thing was stores, which is, hey, when food is coming, maybe my groceries can also come home. Okay, we own a company called Super Daily. Super Daily delivers milk in the morning. Okay, and they have like 1,000 SKUs of groceries also. So if you're out of let's say onions, tomatoes, or if you're out of cereal, bread, eggs, whatever, they deliver it before 7 every morning. That's another inconvenience we have. Okay, with the Swiggy Go platform, we are seeing people do things like getting the laundry done, those kind of things. Okay, there's all that which is currently already available. I'm sure there is other inconvenience we have in our life. any inconvenience we have, we want to just get that out. So slowly we'll build products around that. Okay, that's
awesome. So basically, what part of data actually hints you towards these ideas, or is it like completely strategic?
uh, that's actually one tip that I would like to give, which is there are some decisions which need not be data driven. Okay, like if anyone wants to do a startup, right? There's a 99% chance the startup will fail. Okay, so if you look at the data, you'll say never start a startup. Okay, but then people do startups. Okay,
Absolutely, yeah.
strategic decisions usually are based on gut feel. Okay, can Swiggy pull off something tomorrow? Has to be strategic in this case. So like stores was a strategic decision that we made. Getting stores to win is a separate thing, which will require a lot of analytics. Okay. Sometimes there is the paradox of prediction is also there, which is if I tell, let's say, somebody tells me, hey, David, on Sunday, you will die in a car accident tomorrow. Okay. If it's confirmed that it's a car accident, I will not get on a car tomorrow, right? Okay. Sometimes the prediction itself fulfills the answer. Okay. So, like for example, unless you get X% commission from a restaurant, you're going to fail. Okay. That can actually help us go and negotiate a better deal with the customers. Okay. Sorry, with the restaurants. Okay. That's also a way where paradoxically analytics can predict something, and because you predicted something, the prediction fails, but the business succeeds. Okay, those things are also doable.
Awesome.
Okay, we also launching there's a question on health also. We're launching a healthy food option in a few, not in a few weeks, maybe in April, May. You'll get a whole new in-app experience called Plus, where you press the healthy button, and it's pretty much like a new app which opens. All it has is healthy restaurants, and even in unhealthy restaurants, you get healthy food options. Just look out for that. Okay.
Awesome. So there's one more question, which is a little broader. Now, this is about the current scenario in the market, which is Uber acquiring, Zomato getting acquired. Zomato acquiring Uber. So currently they are probably the biggest players out there.
Not really. No. We are there not.
Okay. We are not there. Okay. As per the numbers, as per the numbers that we had seen, Zomato and Uber cumulatively are serving more customers. But that could be up for.
Yeah, but that's a clean choice that we made.
Right.
It's a difference in perception of who the Uber Eats consumers are. Okay.
Right.
This is my personal opinion, not company's opinion. Uber Eats was number 3 in the market. Okay. And over a period of time, they've just burnt a lot of cash. So if you ask the Uber Eats loyal consumers, they'll say, we go to Uber Eats because it's way cheaper and the discounts are way better. Okay. So we, or at least I feel, Uber Eats is full of discount hunters. The moment the discounts go away, the discount hunters go away. Okay. So Zomato doesn't have that much high discounts compared to Uber Eats. So when they took over, all the Uber Eats consumers became Zomato consumers, and they got 3 coupons with 150 rupees off. Okay. Those coupons expired like 10 days ago or so. Okay. Or when you make 3 orders, they expire. Okay. So once they expire, we'll know the reality of what's happening. Okay. And as of now, I think we are still bigger than them, despite the earlier market shares being like 40, 42, 43 plus 10 or something like that was what it was, right? It would have become like 51, 52, and we would have been 48 or something. We are actually seeing an increase in our orders, not very much, but just increase in our orders attributed to Uber Eats, but they are flat. So our hypothesis is that Uber Eats guys were the discount hunters. Once a discount went away, they stopped ordering. Okay, they didn't move
Oh,
anywhere. They just didn't order. Okay,
oh.
so the market share remains the same as.
So it's like it's a data that was biased to some extent, and then it found its own right way.
No. It was consumers who were very particular about what they wanted. Okay, so if
Mhm.
you are a value hunter and you don't get a value option, okay,
Right,
then you don't make the purchase. Okay, like for
right.
example, I could go to my nearby place and eat, but I get here for half the price, so I'm ordering on Uber Eats. Okay, now Uber Eats is not no longer there. I'll go to the neighborhood place by myself and eat it there. Okay,
Okay, okay. So you
um,
don't opt for any platform in that sense.
in that case. So now the question for us is, hey, can you do something which gets the people who want value all the value they need? Yes, let's explore that option, and then they might come back. Okay.
Mhm. Perfect. Okay. I think there are a lot many more questions, but there's one very fundamental question which a lot of people would want to learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a fundamental question of one problem,
Mm-hmm.
hypothesis, solution, and implementation. So,
Okay.
how do you start with a problem? How do you figure a hypothesis around it? How do you actually solve it? And then how do you go ahead and implement it? So, what is the usual step that you follow? And yeah, it could be case to case basis, but maybe from your experience, what would be a general trend?
Okay. So there are two ways to. So I would just combine problem and hypothesis. Usually they occur together. Okay. There are two ways to go about it. So one is to do an analysis to figure out where the problem is. Okay. So many times you may feel that, hey, I feel there is a lot of fraud in Swiggy. Okay. So you may have zero data to back it up. Okay. Then based on the feeling, you might actually say, okay, maybe there is restaurant and consumer collusion. Maybe Ds are doing fraud. Maybe consumers are doing fraud. Okay. You get a bunch of hypotheses and you test it. Then you identify the problem. Once you have the problem, you have to find the solution for it, and so on and so forth. That's one way to do it. Where you either go with the problem, which is a feeling, or you can actually say that there is a wastage. Like the first example I gave, I know that the wait time at the restaurant is a wastage. Okay. My question will be, hey, how do I reduce my wastage? That's the problem. I'm just starting off with the problem. Okay. Um, there is another way of getting the identifying the problems, which are just uh, without agenda observing things. Okay. For example, we can go through a bunch of chat logs to see what customers are saying on the chat platform. Okay. Without identifying what the problem is, you read enough and you can find some problems which come through. Okay. We
Mhm.
also have a lot of consumers who text us, like friends who type to me, send me an email saying, hey, I need this and I have this problem. Okay. uh, we get like infinite ideas just from that itself. Okay.
Okay.
So all these are the places where you get the problem. Okay. um, on getting to the solution, one of the big issues I faced is trying to address one portion of the problem in a very short amount of time. Okay. So many people think that the first question they get is the best question. Okay. So what I'm trying to do at Swiggy is, I know first question is good. There are five more questions, five first set of questions which are good. Can you explore the problem area better? Can you get 20 questions? Okay. All of which are related to the problem area. Let's say fraud only, right? Can we identify
Right.
30, 40 kinds of fraud that can happen? uh, Once we know that here are the possible ones, now let's choose the best 5 or 6 out of them to work on. Okay. As opposed to working on the question which top of mind at this point of time. Okay. Take some time to identify the best 20, 30 questions which you have. Maybe structure them in a mind map format. And then you start working on them. That ensures that you're solving the problem holistically as opposed to solving one question at a time. Okay.
Perfect. Perfect. So if I can kind of put it down on pointers, you start with a super problem,
Mm-hmm.
and then you drill down. You break it into smaller set of problems. For each of these problems, you try to figure out the right data. You do experimentations, figure out the right data. Basis of that experimentations and the data analysis, you figure out what could the possible reasons for these problems be. Basis on those reasons, you try to inculcate some kind of a solution or a framework or some practice or some process or some software changes or product changes or app changes, which will ensure that you can curb those challenges. And then finally, you wrap it up with a continuous evaluation of the process so that it doesn't deviate anywhere from its expected goals.
That was correct. Understood. Agree.
Perfect. And that this is a big value add for us, David. David, I understand we have eaten up a lot of your time, and
So
we are
much
very
for
grateful that we're very grateful that you spent that time with us. So, on a parting note, so one final question is: you have been in this industry for, I think, much longer than anybody here in the session is probably. So, could you suggest us
Mhm.
going forward, if we have to think about a career in data science, if we have to think about a career in analytics, what is the right way to think, and how should we follow our aspirations to become a data scientist down the line?
Okay. So I would say you need to do two things. So think of it as you want to become an international cricketer, for example. Okay. A, you need to practice, and B, you need to play the match. Okay. So when I say practice, it means getting the sufficient training to understand all the techniques, all the basic theoretical aspects, because it is a high knowledge kind of role. Ensure that you know all the stuff. Okay. But then the real world is different than the world in the books. Okay. I would say you have to do something. Okay. Because you want to become an international cricketer, you cannot say, "Hey, I will not play club cricket. I will not play school cricket." Okay. If you want to become a cricketer, you play cricket whatever opportunity you get. You play in your gully, you play in your school, you play in your college, you play in your club. Maybe you'll then become RCB, and then you get onto international cricket. Okay. This whole thing of whatever chance you get to do it, I would suggest you guys do it. Okay. Because the real experience of analytics and data science comes only when you start doing things. Okay. So A, learn the things, B, do the things. Both of them are equally important. The more you do, the better you get, and the better you get, the more opportunities you'll find in the market. Okay. Because when you do interviews, you'll probably be able to explain things better when you've done things. Okay. And you can't do things without knowing how to do them. Okay. That's what my thought would be.
Awesome. So, yeah, one final question for you. Do you run any kind of internship programs or hiring programs for people who are just getting started in the space?
Not for those who are getting started, yeah, unfortunately.
Mhm.
The freshers we hire directly from IITs.
Colleges. Okay.
And we've done our quota for 2020 already. Okay, even if I have to change my
Awesome.
mind.
No problem.
But if there are people with 2-3 years experience,
Mhm.
in about 3 months, I'll be opening up positions. So you can directly apply on Swiggy.
Wonderful. So, friends, keep a note of this. Please be prepared enough because Swiggy is a great place to be in, and plus the quality of people that you'll find there is enormous. So you have to be at that level to kind of crack your way through. So, thanks a lot, David. It was
Thanks,
great
everyone.
hosting you.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you.
all. Yeah. So on behalf of the entire community, we would like to thank you for sparing your time. It was a very insightful session, and at the same time, we got a first-hand feel as to what we are learning, how do we use it in real world. So it was great, and I think we would love to hear from you again. There were like millions of questions which went unanswered, but yeah, it's just the time.
Actually,
Yeah,
if you want to collate some questions, and I can do a separate session just for questions.
that'll be wonderful. Yes, we'll collate some questions, and I'll forward it to you, and we can have a separate discussion on this, on specifically on the questions part.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Have a nice
Thanks a
rest
lot,
of the weekend.
Thank you. Same to you, David. And friends, thank you all for participating. It was great hosting all of you as well. Very, I would say, very insightful questions that you're asking. Though we could not take all the questions, but overall, I hope all of you derived a lot of value from whatever David had to share here in today's session. We'll have a separate session. We'll try to kind of collate with David on this separately, and we'll try one more session where we can dig a little deeper on the other questionnaires. So thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you, David. We are done
Thanks,
for
everyone.
today.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. See you. So all of you can terminate your sessions now. We are done for the day. Thank you.